never thought I would be that guy, the one telling his story to strangers, trying to make sense of how 15 years of marriage could crumble so quickly. But here I am, and maybe my story will help someone else see the warning signs I missed before their world falls apart too. Sometimes destruction comes not from outside forces, but from the people you thought would always stand beside you no matter what. It was a Tuesday when my life collapsed around me. I remember because Tuesdays were always my early day at the office. I work as a financial advisor at Morgan Stanley, have been for nearly 2 decades, building a reputation as someone who could be trusted with millions of dollars of other people's money. That particular Tuesday, I had closed a major account with a pharmaceutical company worth millions in commissions over the next 5 years. The celebration drinks with colleagues had been tempting. Champagne bottles already being opened when I checked my watch and decided to surprise Rebecca by coming home early instead. Funny how the universe works sometimes. I was the one who ended up surprised in the cruelest way possible. I pulled into our driveway in Westchester, admiring the colonial house we had purchased 7 years ago. $350,000 of back then, now worth nearly double that amount thanks to the renovations I had paid for in the booming real estate market. The perfectly manicured lawn that costs thousands each year to maintain, the stone pathway lined with hydrangeas Rebecca had planted last spring, the American flag hanging by the front door that we replaced every year on the 4th of July. It was the picture-perfect suburban dream that people moved to this neighborhood for. I had worked 80-hour weeks to afford it, while Rebecca had decorated every inch with meticulous attention, spending weekends at antique shops and design stores in search of the perfect accessories. It was our dream home, or so I foolishly believed at the time. The moment I stepped through the front door, I sensed something was wrong. The air felt heavy, charged with tension that made the hair on my arms stand up like there was electricity running through the house. Rebecca's Lexus was in the garage, but so was another car I did not recognize, a sleek black Audi that looked expensive and out of place next to our vehicles. I heard voices from the living room. Rebecca's and her daughter Megan's, their tones hushed and urgent. There was a third voice too, male, unfamiliar, speaking in professional measured tones that immediately put me on edge. "Hello," I called out, setting my briefcase down in the foyer, loosening my tie slightly. The silence that followed was deafening. The voices stopped immediately. Dead silence followed by hushed whispers that I could not quite make out, but that sounded conspiratorial. I walked toward the living room, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors Rebecca had insisted we install last spring, despite the astronomical cost that had nearly doubled our renovation budget. Rebecca sat on our white leather sofa, the one she had spent weeks choosing from a designer showroom in Manhattan, driving there 3 separate times before making a decision. Beside her was Megan, her 19-year-old daughter from her first marriage to that pharmaceutical rep who had moved to Arizona years ago without looking back, leaving Rebecca to raise their daughter alone until I came into the picture. Across from them sat a man I had never seen before, dressed in what looked like an expensive suit. Not as expensive as mine, but close enough to suggest money and professional success. "Ethan," Rebecca said, her voice cold as January ice, her eyes not meeting mine. "You are home early." I smiled, confusion washing over me like a wave. "Closed the Peterson account. Thought I would surprise you." My eyes moved to the stranger, taking in his leather portfolio in carefully neutral expression. Did I interrupt something important? Nobody smiled back. The atmosphere was thick enough to cut with a knife. Megan looked down at her hands, then up at me with an expression I could not quite place, something between fear and contempt. It was unsettling coming from the girl whose homework I had helped with countless nights, whose first heartbreak I had consoled with ice cream and bad movies, whose college application essays I had reviewed and polished until they shone. "This is Jeffrey Winters," Rebecca said, gesturing to the stranger without warmth. "Megan's therapist." I extended my hand, professional instinct taking over despite my growing confusion. "Nice to meet you. I did not realize Megan was seeing someone professionally. Is everything all right?" Jeffrey Winters did not take my offered hand. Instead, he closed the leather-bound notebook on his lap and stood, his expression neutral, but his eyes cold and judgmental. "I think I should leave you all to talk about this privately. Mrs. Harrison, we can continue our session tomorrow at my office." Same time should work for our scheduled appointment. Rebecca nodded, brushing invisible lint from her cream-colored pants that I recognize as the expensive ones I had bought her for her birthday last month. Thank you for coming on such short notice, De Winters. I appreciate your flexibility and support during this difficult time. When the front door closed behind him, I turned back to my wife and stepdaughter, bewilderment turning to concern as I noted their closed-off body language and refusal to meet my eyes directly. What is going on? Since when does Megan have a therapist? And why was he making a house call? That seems unusual for a professional. Rebecca's eyes were hard, her mouth a thin line, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white against her tan skin. Since you started making her uncomfortable in her own home, Ethan, since she became afraid to be alone with you under this roof that should have been her safe haven. My mind went blank, a sudden ringing in my ears drowning out everything else as though I had been struck. What? What are you talking about? What do you mean uncomfortable? Megan spoke then, her voice trembling slightly, but with an undertone I could not identify, something rehearsed in her delivery that my shocked brain could not process yet. I told Mom everything, Ethan, about the comments you make when we are alone, the way you look at me when Mom is not around, how you come into my room without knocking even when I am changing, how you brush against me in the hallway and kitchen when there is clearly enough space to pass without contact. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach by someone twice my size. The air left my lungs in a rush, leaving me struggling for words. What are you talking about? None of that ever happened. Not once. Rebecca, you cannot possibly believe. Do not, Rebecca said, raising her hand, her wedding ring catching the afternoon light that streamed through the windows I had replaced last year when the old ones started leaking. She told me how you cornered her last week when I was at my sister's overnight, how you suggested that maybe you two could have a special relationship now that she was an adult, how you touched her arm and told her she was becoming more beautiful than her mother, how you tried to kiss her when she pulled away. The blood drained from my face so quickly I felt lightheaded. Nausea rose in my throat like bile. That never happened, not any of it. Rebecca, we have been married for 15 years. You know me better than anyone in this world. You know I would never do something like that to anyone, especially not your daughter whom I have helped raise. I believed I knew you, Rebecca cut me off, her voice sharp enough to draw blood, eyes flashing with a mixture of disgust and disappointment that cut deeper than any knife could. And I will not have my daughter living in fear in her own home, the home that should be her safe place, the place where she should feel protected, not threatened by the man I brought into our lives. I looked at Megan, trying to understand what was happening, searching her face for some explanation. Her eyes were downcast, but I caught the slightest curl at the corner of her mouth before she hit it. That was when I knew. This was calculated. This was deliberate. This was planned. The realization hit me like a physical blow, leaving me reeling. Rebecca, this is insane. I have never done anything inappropriate with Megan. Ever. Not once in the 10 years I have helped raise her. I have treated her like my own daughter from the day we met. You know me better than this. You have to know this is not true. My voice rose with each word, desperation creeping in despite my efforts to remain calm and rational. Do I? Rebecca stood, arms crossed over her chest defensively, creating a physical barrier between us. Because the man I thought I knew would not make sexual advances toward my 19-year-old daughter. The man I married would not betray my trust this way. The man I loved would not destroy our family like this. I did not, I shouted, then immediately regretted raising my voice when I saw the satisfied look that flashed across Megan's face before she quickly rearranged her features into a mask of fear, shrinking back against the sofa cushions dramatically. See, she whispered to her mother, her voice carrying perfectly across the room. He is volatile. This is what I was telling you about. The way he gets when someone confronts him. This is what I was afraid of. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, knowing every reaction was being scrutinized and twisted into something sinister. Rebecca, please, can we talk about this rationally? Alone without Megan here? There must be some misunderstanding or confusion that we can clear up if we just speak privately. There is nothing to talk about, Rebecca said with finality, her stance rigid and unyielding. And I am not leaving my daughter alone with you ever again. Not for a minute. I want you out of this house tonight. Pack your things and go." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me, reality shifting into something unrecognizable, like I had suddenly stepped into someone else's nightmare. "You are throwing me out? Based on what? An accusation with zero proof after 15 years together without even listening to my side? I do not need proof. I need to protect my daughter. That is what matters to me right now. Her safety comes before anything else, including your denials." I looked at Megan again. Really looked at her. The girl I had helped raise since she was 9, who I had taught to drive in empty parking lots on Sunday mornings when Rebecca was too nervous to handle it, who I had stayed up late with helping on science projects and math homework she struggled with. The girl whose college tuition I was currently paying without complaint, whose car I had bought last year as a graduation present, whose European trip with friends I had funded just months ago. "Why are you doing this?" I asked her directly, my voice low and even, fighting to maintain control. For just a second, I saw something like guilt flash in her eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by practiced fear as she moved closer to her mother, clinging to her arm. "Because I cannot live like this anymore," she said, voice cracking on cue like an actress who had rehearsed her lines. "I am scared of you, Ethan. I cannot sleep knowing you might come into my room. I lock my door every night but still lay awake listening for your footsteps." Rebecca moved to Megan's side, putting an arm around her shoulders protectively. The two of them united against me. "You need to leave. Now, tonight. Take what you need for a few days, and we can arrange for you to pick up the rest later when you have found somewhere permanent to live." "This is my house too," I said quietly, trying one last time to reach the rational woman I had married, the partner who had stood beside me through job changes and family deaths and health scares. "My name is on the mortgage. I pay the bills, the property taxes, the insurance. You cannot just throw me out on the word of a teenager with no evidence." "And we can deal with all of that through lawyers," Rebecca replied, her tone suggesting the discussion was over, a door slamming shut between us. "But tonight you are sleeping somewhere else. Or I call the police and tell them everything Megan has told me. Everything. How do you think that would affect your career, Ethan? Your reputation at the firm, your standing in the community, your clients' trust?" I stood there, stunned by the implicit threat, as 15 years of marriage disintegrated before my eyes, like sand washing away in a rising tide. I thought about arguing more, about fighting for the truth, about demanding to be heard. But the look in Rebecca's eyes told me everything I needed to know. She had made her choice, and it was not me. It had never been me. Not really. "Fine," I said finally, a strange calm settling over me like a shroud. "I will pack a bag." As I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, the room we had shared for years, where we had talked about our dreams for hours, made love countless times, held each other through storms, both literal and figurative, I heard Megan's voice, soft but clear enough to carry. "Thanks, Mom. I knew you would believe me, and knew you would choose me." I packed methodically, taking only what I needed for a few days: clothes, toiletries, my laptop, and important documents like my passport and birth certificate. Family photos stayed on the walls, though I slipped one small picture of Rebecca and me from our honeymoon into my bag when no one was looking. Books remained on shelves. Artwork stayed hanging. I was not ready to admit this was permanent, that my life had been destroyed by a lie I could not disprove, a weapon I could not defend against. When I came back downstairs, Rebecca stood in the foyer, keys in hand. My keys. She held them out to me, avoiding eye contact, her hand trembling slightly in a way that might have given me hope if I had not seen the resolve in her eyes earlier. "I will be staying at the Marriott downtown," I said, taking them from her, careful not to let our fingers touch, maintaining the distance she had established. "When you are ready to have an actual conversation about this, call me. My cell number has not changed." Megan watched from the living room doorway, arms crossed, expression unreadable, but somehow triumphant. As I passed her, I paused, keeping my distance but making sure she heard me clearly. "I do not know why you are lying," I said quietly, "but I hope it is worth it. I hope whatever you think you are gaining from this makes up for what you are destroying. Because once trust is broken, it cannot be repaired easily. Remember that. For a split second, her mask slipped. Something like triumph gleamed in her eyes before being quickly suppressed. Then she took a step back, as if afraid I might lunge at her, a performance for her mother's benefit. "Just leave," she whispered loud enough for Rebecca to hear. "Please just go. We do not feel safe with you here anymore." Rebecca opened the front door, standing aside to let me pass, maintaining several feet between us as though I were contagious. "Goodbye, Ethan." I stepped outside into the cool evening air, the door closing firmly behind me with a sound of finality. The sound had a terrible weight to it, like a coffin lid dropping into place, sealing off my past life. In my rearview mirror, our house, my house, grew smaller until it disappeared entirely around the bend, taking with it 15 years of memories and trust. That night in the hotel room, I did not sleep a single minute. I stared at the ceiling, replaying the scene over and over like a movie I could not turn off. What had I missed? When had Megan decided to turn on me? Why would Rebecca, who had known me intimately for 15 years, shared my bed and my dreams and my failures, believe I would suddenly become a predator? The questions circled like vultures, offering no answers, only deepening the wound with each pass. By morning, shock had hardened into something else entirely. Determination. Resolve. A cold clarity that cut through the emotional haze like a laser. I had built everything we had, the house, the lifestyle, the vacations, the security, the comfort. I had paid for Megan's private school when Rebecca complained about the public school options. I had bought her car, her phone, funded her shopping sprees and spring break trips. I had supported Rebecca when she wanted to quit her marketing job to find herself at 40. I had been patient when that journey led her through pottery classes, yoga teacher training, meditation retreats, and finally to her dream of opening a small beauty salon in town. All of it funded by me, all of it taken for granted, all of it about to change dramatically. I called the office, explained I needed a few personal days for a family emergency without elaborating. Then I made another call to Patricia Clark, a divorce attorney one of my clients had used last year. She had a reputation for being ruthless in the courtroom, relentless in negotiations, and utterly without sentiment when it came to protecting her client's interests. Perfect, exactly what I needed now. She agreed to see me that afternoon, rearranging her schedule when she heard the urgency in my voice. Patricia's office was in a sleek downtown high-rise, all glass and chrome and power. She was around 50, with sharp eyes behind designer glasses and a no-nonsense haircut that suggested efficiency over vanity. Her handshake was firm, her assessment immediate as she gestured for me to sit across from her imposing desk. "Tell me everything," she said after the preliminaries were done, her pen poised over a yellow legal pad, recorder discreetly placed between us. "Do not leave anything out, no matter how embarrassing or private. I need the complete picture to help you effectively." I did, laying out the accusations, Rebecca's reaction, my eviction from my own home, the implicit threat to call the police. The words tasted bitter in my mouth, but I forced them out, watching Patricia's expression remain professionally neutral throughout, though I caught flickers of recognition at certain points, as though she were mentally cataloging similar cases. When I finished, she set down her pen with precision, aligning it perfectly with the edge of her notepad. "Unfortunately, Mr. Harrison, I have seen this before. False accusations as a divorce strategy. It is despicable, but effective, especially when children or stepchildren are involved. They become both weapon and shield in these situations." "But there is no proof," I said, spreading my hands helplessly, the frustration evident in my voice. "Because nothing happened. None of it. How do I defend against accusations about things that never occurred?" "Proof does not matter in the court of public opinion," Patricia replied, her tone matter-of-fact, worldly-wise. "Or in family court sometimes. The mere suggestion of impropriety can destroy a reputation, a career, a life. The accusation itself becomes the punishment, regardless of truth. But here is the good news. We can fight fire with fire. We can use the system to protect you just as they are trying to use it against you." Meaning, meaning we go on a fence immediately. You said you have financially supported your wife and her daughter all these years, correct? That you have been the primary breadwinner? Yes, Rebecca has not worked full-time since we got married, and I have been paying for everything for Megan since she was 9. School, clothes, vacations, healthcare, everything. Patricia smiled thinly, her eyes calculating as though running numbers in her head. And the house, cars, bank accounts, retirement funds, whose name are they in? The house is in both our names, the investments too, but I set up the accounts, I manage them, I make all the contributions. Rebecca has access but never checks them. She has never been interested in the financial details. And does your wife have any idea exactly how much money you have or where it all is? Does she know about all the accounts, the investments, the retirement funds? I thought about it carefully. Rebecca had never been interested in the details of our finances beyond knowing we were secure. She had been content to let me handle everything as long as her credit cards worked and the bills were paid automatically. Probably not the full picture. I handle the finances. She knows about the main accounts, but not necessarily all the investment holdings or retirement funds. Patricia nodded, satisfaction crossing her features like a predator who has spotted vulnerable prey. Good. First things first. We need to secure your assets before she tries to drain them. Because she will, Mr. Harrison. Maybe not today, but soon. When she realizes the gravity of the situation she has created. When her lawyer explains the financial implications of divorce. When the reality of supporting herself and her daughter without your income sinks in. Rebecca would not, Mr. Harrison, with all due respect, you also thought your wife would not believe her daughter's lies and throw you out of your own home without a shred of evidence. Let us not underestimate what people are capable of when marriages end and money is at stake. I have seen pillars of the community turn into monsters over china patterns in vacation homes. I have seen kind, gentle people become vindictive over retirement accounts and heirloom jewelry. Divorce brings out the worst in people. Always. She was right, of course. By the time I left Patricia's office 3 hours later, I had a plan. It was not pretty, but neither was being falsely accused by your stepdaughter while your wife stood by and watched. Neither was being thrown out of your own home and threatened with police involvement over lies. The next few weeks passed in a blur of paperwork and meetings and sleepless nights. I moved from the hotel to a furnished apartment downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a temporary place that nevertheless cost more per month than our mortgage. Rebecca filed for divorce first, citing irreconcilable differences rather than the accusations. Smart move on her part, I had to admit. I filed a counter petition immediately. Patricia went to work with the efficiency of a surgeon removing a tumor. First, we froze the joint accounts, leaving Rebecca with access only to her personal checking account, which held a fraction of our assets. Then we documented every penny I had spent on Rebecca and Megan over the years, an astronomical sum when tallied up. Private school tuition, European vacations, designer clothes, the salon startup costs that had been far higher than initially budgeted. We filed for exclusive use of the house, arguing that since I had paid for it, and the accusations against me were unsubstantiated, I should be allowed to return home while Rebecca and Megan found other accommodations. The judge did not grant that particular motion, citing the need to maintain the status quo temporarily, but the look on Rebecca's face when she received the filing was almost worth it. Almost. Her shock at discovering I would fight back rather than slink away in shame was evident even across the courtroom. I threw myself into work, logging 12-hour days, building my client list even higher. Networking aggressively. If I was going to war, I needed ammunition. Money was ammunition, and I intended to be well armed for the battle ahead. The irony was not lost on me that the more I worked, the more money I made, the more resources I had to fight with, while Rebecca's situation grew, increasingly precarious as the weeks passed. 45 days after being thrown out of my home, I received a text from Rebecca. We need to talk. Can we meet somewhere neutral? Just the two of us. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between my apartment and my house. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table, looking smaller somehow. The confident woman I had married seemed diminished, nervous, her designer clothes hanging a bit looser than before. suggesting weight loss. Dark circles under her eyes matched my own. I ordered a black coffee and sat across from her. You wanted to talk? Rebecca's hands were wrapped around her mug, her knuckles white with tension. This is getting out of hand, Ethan. The lawyers, the filings, the freezing of accounts. It is too much and, seems to be proceeding exactly as one would expect when a man is falsely accused and thrown out of his own home. Actions have consequences, Rebecca. She flinched visibly, her eyes dropping to her coffee as though it contained answers. The lawyers are eating up all the money. The accounts are frozen. I cannot access anything beyond my personal account. The credit cards are declined everywhere. That is unfortunate, I said, taking a sip of coffee, watching her over the rim of my cup, noting the chipped nail polish she would never have tolerated before. The salon is struggling badly. I had to let 2 stylists go last week. Clients are leaving because we cannot afford to restock products. The suppliers are demanding payment for past orders before they will ship anything new. I raised an eyebrow. The salon I funded? The one you put only in your name, despite my objections? The one that was supposed to be our retirement plan, but that has consistently lost money every quarter since opening? Rebecca looked away, her shoulders slumping slightly in defeat. Megan's tuition payment is due next week. The bursar's office has called twice already. I do not have the money to pay it. They are threatening to drop her from her classes if payment is not received by Friday. Ah, I said, understanding dawning with perfect clarity. So this meeting is not about reconciliation. It is not about admitting the truth. It is not about apologizing for a terrible mistake. It is about money. That is why you reached out after weeks of silence. Not because you miss me or because you have realized the truth, but because you need financial support. It is about being reasonable with you. Whatever happened between you and me, Megan should not suffer. Her education should not be collateral damage in our problems. I set down my cup carefully, the sound of porcelain against wood unnaturally loud in the quiet corner. Nothing happened between you and me, Rebecca. Your daughter lied. You believed her. You threw me out. You filed for divorce. Those are the facts. The only facts that matter now. Ethan, no, let me finish. I have supported Megan for 10 years, paid for everything she needed and most of what she wanted. And how did she repay that? By accusing me of something disgusting, something that could have ruined my career, my reputation, my life, something that still might, depending on how vindictive you decide to be. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. She was confused. She misinterpreted some things. Maybe you said something that she took the wrong way. Maybe there was a misunderstanding that spiraled. Stop! My voice was sharper than I intended, drawing glances from nearby tables. I lowered it before continuing. Do not insult me with more lies or excuses. Megan was not confused. She was not mistaken. She was calculated. She knew exactly what she was doing. And you were gullible enough to believe her without question, without evidence, without even giving me the chance to defend myself. A tear slid down Rebecca's cheek, leaving a track in her carefully applied makeup. What do you want from us? What will it take to resolve this without destroying everyone involved? I leaned forward. I want an admission in writing that the accusations were false. I want Megan to face consequences for what she did. I want her to apologize publicly for lying, and I want you to admit you made a terrible mistake in believing her over me. I cannot do that, she whispered. She is my daughter, and I was your husband. I stood, leaving my coffee half finished. Tell Megan she should look into student loans. I hear they are giving them to just about anyone these days. Or perhaps she could get a job to pay for her education, like millions of other students do. I walked out, ignoring Rebecca calling my name. In the car, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, breathing deeply to center myself. It did not feel as satisfying as I had imagined. The hollow ache in my chest remained, the sense of betrayal still fresh despite the weeks that had passed. That night, I received another text, this time from Megan. My mom is crying because of you. She cannot sleep. She cannot eat. She might lose the salon because of your pettiness. I hope you are happy with what you have done to her. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Your mom is crying because of you, because of what you did, because of the lie you told that destroyed our marriage. Remember that every time you see her suffer. She did not text back. The divorce proceedings dragged on, becoming increasingly contentious. Patricia was ruthless, exactly as I had hired her to be. We subpoenaed Rebecca's salon records, revealing that despite her claims of financial distress, she had recently given herself a substantial raise and purchased new equipment that could have waited. We questioned Megan under oath about the alleged incidents, watching her squirm uncomfortably as she tried to provide details about events that never happened, tripping over inconsistencies in her story, unable to maintain the timeline she had created. Meanwhile, Rebecca's lawyer, a flashy type named Howard, who clearly thought he could charm his way through the case with expensive ties and fake concern, tried to paint me as controlling and financially abusive. He pointed to the frozen accounts, the financial pressure I was now exerting. Mr. Harrison, he said during my deposition, his voice oozing false concern, is it not true that you have deliberately put your wife in a precarious financial position to punish her for believing her daughter? That you have weaponized your financial control to inflict suffering? Patricia started to object, but I held up my hand. No, it is fine. I want to answer this question directly. I looked him directly in the eye, refusing to be intimidated by his practice courtroom demeanor. What I have done is protect my assets from someone who has proven she cannot be trusted. Someone who would believe an outrageous lie rather than trust the man she lived with for 15 years. Someone who would throw her husband out of his own home based on an accusation without a shred of evidence. Someone who threatened to call the police on me for crimes I never committed. My actions are not punishment. They are self-preservation. The lawyer tried again, leaning forward with a predatory smile. But you admit you are using money as leverage? That you are deliberately causing financial hardship to force concessions? I admit I am no longer funding the lifestyle of people who tried to destroy mine. There is a difference, a significant one. 4 months into the divorce, Rebecca's salon closed its doors permanently. She could not make the lease payments, and suppliers had stopped extending credit entirely. 6 months in, she put the house on the market, unable to keep up with the mortgage on her own with her limited income. 7 months in, Megan dropped out of college and moved back home, taking a job as a waitress at a local restaurant to help with expenses. I did not celebrate these developments. There was no joy in watching the destruction of what I had helped build over years. But there was a grim satisfaction in knowing that actions had consequences, that lies had consequences, that betrayal carried a price. The turning point came in month 8. I was working late at the office, going over client portfolios, when my phone rang. Megan's name flashed on the screen. I almost did not answer, assuming it was another attempt to guilt me into providing financial support. Hello? Ethan? Her voice was shaky, tear-filled, lacking the confidence of our previous interactions. I need help. It is Mom. What is wrong? Despite everything, alarm shot through me at her tone. She is gone. I came home from work and she was not here. She left her phone, her purse, her medication. She has been so depressed lately, barely getting out of bed some days, and there was an empty bottle of pills in the bathroom. And I do not know where she is or what to do. Have you called the police? Was already grabbing my coat, heading for the door, my body moving before my mind had fully processed the implications. Not yet. I thought, I do not know what I thought. That maybe you would know where she might go. You knew her better than anyone. I closed my eyes, thinking through possibilities. Did you check the lake house? Silence on the other end. Then, we sold the lake house, remember, last month, to cover legal fees and back payments on the salon lease. I had forgotten, or blocked it out. The small cabin by Lake George that we had bought as a weekend retreat 5 years ago, where we had spent lazy Sundays reading on the dock, where I had taught Megan to fish despite her initial reluctance, where Rebecca and I had talked about growing old together. What about her sister's place? Aunt Linda is in Europe for that teaching position. Mom has her keys, but... Megan's voice broke. I sighed, mind racing through memories and possibilities. There was one other place, the Overlook by Hudson Highlands. We used to go there when we were first dating. It was our special spot. The state park, that viewpoint over the river. Yes, there is a specific spot, a large flat rock that looks like a seat. I will text you the location. But Megan, call the police too. Now, this is not something to handle alone if she is truly in a dangerous state of mind. I hung up, sent the coordinates, then headed for my car. Against my better judgment, against the advice Patricia would surely give if consulted, I found myself driving toward Hudson Highlands State Park, a place I had avoided for months because of the memories it held. The drive took 40 minutes through increasingly heavy traffic. By the time I arrived, dusk was settling over the river, painting the water copper and gold in the fading light. I parked and hiked the familiar trail up to the overlook, a rocky outcropping with a sweeping view of the Hudson River that had once been our favorite place to watch sunsets. And there she was, sitting on the large flat boulder where I had proposed 15 years ago, arms wrapped around herself, staring out at the water. No pills visible, no dramatic gesture in progress. Just a woman looking utterly lost. I approached slowly, making enough noise that she would hear me coming, not wanting to startle her. She turned, eyes widening when she saw me instead of Megan. Ethan? Megan called me, I explained, stopping a few feet away, maintaining distance between us. She was worried about you. Rebecca turned back to the view. She should not have done that. She should not have involved you. She thought you might hurt yourself. A bitter laugh escaped her, hollow and without humor. No, I'm not that brave, or that cowardly, depending on how you look at it. Not like my father. I moved closer, sat on a boulder near hers. Not too close. What are you doing out here, Beck? The old nickname slipped out before I could stop it, a habit from years of intimacy that was hard to break. Rebecca noticed, her eyes flickering to mine briefly before returning to the horizon. Remembering, she said simply, this is where you proposed. Yes. 15 years ago, you were so nervous you almost dropped the ring into the river. Your hands were shaking so badly. Despite everything, a small smile tugged at my mouth at the memory. The box was slippery. We sat in silence for a while, watching the last light fade from the sky. Stars began to appear, one by one, pinpricks of light in the deepening darkness. She lied, Rebecca said suddenly, her voice so quiet I almost did not hear it. Megan, she admitted it to me last week. Something in my chest tightened painfully. Why? Rebecca shook her head, strands of hair catching the fading light. She said she was jealous of our relationship, that I always put you first, that she wanted me to herself. A tear slid down her cheek. What kind of mother does that make me? That my own daughter would go to such lengths because she felt neglected or secondary? What kind of wife does it make you? I asked, not unkindly. That you believed her over me? Rebecca wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. A terrible one. More silence fell between us. A light breeze rustled the trees around us, carrying the scent of water and earth. I am sorry, Ethan, more than I can ever express. I destroyed everything we built together based on a lie. I should have known better. I should have trusted you. I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in months. The woman I had loved for 15 years. The woman I had built a life with, planned a future with. She seemed smaller somehow, diminished, like something vital had been extinguished within her. No, I said finally, not everything is destroyed. We sat there until full dark, talking quietly, about what had happened, about Megan, about the salon and the house and the divorce that was still proceeding despite this moment of truth, about the financial realities and legal complications that remained to be resolved. What happens now? Rebecca asked as we finally stood to leave, the night having grown cold around us. Now we go home. You talk to your daughter. I talk to my lawyer. We figure out next steps. And us? Is there any chance for us after this? I looked at her, this woman I had once known better than myself, the woman who had believed the worst of me without evidence. There is no us anymore, Rebecca. That died the night you chose Megan's lies over our marriage. Some things cannot be undone. Some betrayals cut too deep for repair. Her face crumpled, but she nodded. I understand. I would feel the same way if our positions were reversed. We walked back to our separate cars in silence. Before she got into hers, Rebecca turned to me one last time. For what it is worth, It was the biggest mistake of my life, the thing I will regret until my dying day. I know, I said. That is what makes it a tragedy. In the weeks that followed, things changed significantly. Rebecca and Megan provided written statements recanting the accusations. The divorce proceedings became less acrimonious, though they continued toward their inevitable conclusion. I did not move back into the house, even after Rebecca offered it. Some thresholds, once crossed, cannot be uncrossed. Some trust, once broken, cannot be restored. Megan avoided me entirely, which was for the best. I heard through Rebecca that she had re-enrolled in community college, was living in an apartment with friends, working part-time to pay her own way. I did not resume paying her tuition. That bridge had been burned beyond repair, reduced to ashes that could never be rebuilt into something stable. Rebecca found Aish at another salon working for someone else this time. She seemed humbled, subdued in our rare interactions, professional rather than personal. The house sold and we split the proceeds as part of the settlement. She did not fight me on any of the financial terms, accepting a far smaller portion than she might have been entitled to under different circumstances, acknowledging the damage she had caused. The divorce was finalized almost exactly 1 year after that terrible Tuesday when I came home early. The paperwork arrived at my office in a manila envelope, official and impersonal. I signed where indicated and sent it back. Just like that, 15 years reduced to a signature and a notary stamp. The ease of ending something that had taken years to build struck me as profoundly sad. That evening, I sat in my new condo, purchased, not rented this time, and poured myself a scotch. I had won, in a sense, vindicated myself, protected my assets, even received an apology and admission of wrongdoing. So why did victory taste so hollow? Why did the silence of my new home feel so oppressive? My phone buzzed, a text from Patricia. It is done, congratulations on your fresh start. I texted back a simple thank you and set the phone down. Fresh start, as if the past could be so easily erased, as if 15 years could be wiped away like writing on a chalkboard. Another buzz. Rebecca this time. It is official then? I am sorry for everything, Ethan. I hope you find happiness. I did not respond. What was there to say that had not already been said? I walked to the window, scotch in hand, looking out at the city lights spreading below like fallen stars. In the reflection of the glass, I could see myself older now, harder, changed in ways I was still discovering. The man who had been thrown out of his home a year ago would not recognize this new version of himself. 3 days later, I received the call. Rebecca had been in an accident on the Taconic Parkway. Her car had gone off the road during a rainstorm, rolled down an embankment. She was pronounced dead at the scene by first responders. No other vehicles were involved. The funeral was small, subdued. Rebecca's sister, Linda, back from Europe, hollow-eyed with grief and perhaps guilt at having been absent during her sister's struggles. A few friends from her salon days, former colleagues who spoke of her talent and kindness. Megan, pale and shell-shocked, supported by a young man I did not recognize. And me, standing apart from the others, unsure of my place in this final chapter of a story I had once been central to. After the service, Megan approached me. She had lost weight, dark circles under her eyes testifying to sleepless nights and grief that aged her beyond her years. Thank you for coming, she said formally, as if I were a distant acquaintance rather than the man who had helped raise her. Of course, I replied. I am sorry for your loss. She looked at me sharply, perhaps searching for sarcasm or resentment, finding none. She loved you, you know, until the end. I know. Megan swallowed hard, struggling with whatever she wanted to say next. I have been seeing a real therapist, actually seeing one, not just pretending to. I said nothing, waiting. She is helping me understand why I did what I did. It does not excuse it, but... She trailed off. I am trying to be better, to understand my motivations, to make amends where I can. Good, I said, and meant it. Mom never blamed me, not once, even after I admitted everything. She took all the responsibility herself, said it was her failure as a mother that made me feel I had to lie to get her attention. That sounds like her, always protecting you. Megan's eyes filled with tears. I killed her, did not I? Not directly, but everything that happened. The stress, the depression, the financial problems, it all led to the accident. If I had not lied, she would still be alive. I could have agreed, could have twisted the knife. Part of me, the wounded part that still smarted from the betrayal, wanted to. Instead, I shook my head. No, Megan, you made a terrible choice, and it had terrible consequences. But your mother made her choices too, and I made mine. We are all responsible for our own actions. The road was wet. She was tired. Accidents happen. She wiped her eyes with a crumpled tissue. How can you be so calm? Do not you hate me for what I did to your marriage? I considered the question carefully before answering. I did, for a long time. Now I mostly feel nothing, and that is its own kind of sad. Megan nodded. After a moment, she reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. Mom wrote this for you before the accident. She never mailed it. I found it in her desk drawer when I was gathering documents. I took it, feeling the weight of the paper in my hands. Thank you. Goodbye, Ethan. Goodbye, Megan. I watched her walk away, joining the young man who had been hovering nearby. They left together, shoulders bent against a wind that seemed to blow only for them. I did not open Rebecca's letter until I was home, sitting in my leather armchair with a glass of scotch for company. Inside was a single page, covered in Rebecca's flowing handwriting. I read it slowly, then again, then a third time. She wrote of regret, of course, of shame and sorrow, and 1,000 apologies, but also of gratitude for the years we had had, of memories that sustained her even as our marriage crumbled, of hopes that I would find happiness again someday with someone who would never doubt me as she had. And in the final paragraph, a request that I someday forgive Megan, not for her sake, but for my own peace of mind. Carrying anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, she wrote. I learned that too late. Do not make my mistake. I folded the letter and put it back in its envelope. Then I set it on the coffee table and stared at it as the ice melted in my glass, diluting the expensive scotch I could no longer taste. 3 months later, I ran into Megan at a grocery store. She looked better, healthier, calmer. We exchanged awkward greetings, then stood in uncomfortable silence amid the produce section, fellow shoppers moving around us like water around stones. How are you? She finally asked, clutching a basket containing pasta and sauce and a small bottle of wine. I am okay, I said, surprised to find it was mostly true. You? Getting there. She hesitated, shifting from one foot to the other. I am transferring to state in the fall. Full scholarship. Congratulations, that is impressive. Thanks. She shifted her weight again. I have been working with a victims advocacy group, helping actual victims of the things She could not finish the sentence, the irony too painful. That is good, Megan. She looked up at me. I do not expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know I am trying to make amends, somehow. I thought about Rebecca's letter, about poison and forgiveness. We all have to find our way forward, I said. She nodded. More silence fell between us, heavy with things unsaid. Well, I should go, she said finally. It was good to see you, Ethan. You too. I watched her walk away, this young woman who had once been almost a daughter to me, who had shattered my life with a lie, who was now trying to rebuild herself from the wreckage, just as I was. I finished my shopping and unloaded the bags into my car. Before starting the engine, I sat for a moment, hands on the wheel. In the store window, I could see my reflection, still here, still standing, despite everything. Sometimes that is all you can ask for, to still be standing when the storm has passed, to still be moving forward when everything familiar has been swept away. I drove home to my empty condo, to the life I was slowly rebuilding. It was not the life I had planned. It was not the one I had wanted, but it was mine, and for now, that was enough. If you like this story, please click the hype button. This video deserves to be popular. Have a nice rest.